And it's the free Western Kabuki, in which we will survey a couple of villains. I am Whack Nicholson, as always, joined by the beautiful Caleb Bird Respecter. Caleb, how are you?
Doing fantastic. I just got done smoking a cigarette after that.
You smoked a cigarette after that? Yeah, we just had a wonderful conversation with Brian Krasenstein. Juniper, how do you feel about after our conversation with him?
I'm elated. Multiple times during that interview, I stood up and walked around because, like, I'll be honest, I feel like we cooked him. We put his ass to the fire. We got his ass a little bit. I couldn't believe how we handled that one. That was
so.
That was
to
great.
all of you who in the Discord or who DM me were like, you let him get off the last time he was on the show. I think you might.
It's the only thing anybody said to us.
Yeah. I'm tired of getting tagged in Krasenstein content. Now you can stop. You can listen to it. Justice has been done.
Yeah, we got his ass. We really held his ass to the fire in this last interview. At least that's how it felt when we were talking to him just about like a couple of minutes ago.
And we could not think of any better person to join us to discuss the cooking of the Krasensteins than the Twitter man himself, Jules Suzdaltsev. How are you today?
I am amazing. Thank you for having me on. This is one of the best, most requested topics for me that we could possibly be doing and talking about. Just one of the most odious, worst, dishonest people on Twitter, and cooking him, dunking him, serving him. I love it. I'm here for it.
So you're going to talk about some stuff that we talked about in the premium, but some stuff we weren't able to get to with the beautiful bros. And Caleb's been cooking on this for a while. He's teased it a lot in the Discord. Caleb, you want to tell us a little bit about the early life of the young Kraz bros?
Yeah, so we didn't really get a chance to talk about that in the last episode, and even frankly, not that much in the. It's towards the end of the interview we just did with him. It's just like, so everybody knows them as like the Ronald Plump awful children's book guys, but some people may know like just a little bit about like their financial crimes, their syndicate of websites that caused the Department of Justice to seize $450,000 from them through money laundering. Well, they were never charged. That's a thing that they like to point out. But essentially, like they started out online, just like selling baseball cards on eBay and making money online. Where they were like, wait, let's make like a whole deal. Where they kind of graduated into like making these web forums that were, I mean, they had a whole network of sites that appeared to operate independently when they were working kind of in tandem. But like there were like the two main ones that people talk about are like the Moneymaker Group and TalkGold.com, where like they were specifically like reviewing, or they weren't, as they'll be quick to say, they were not, but the websites would review HIPs, which are like Ponzi schemes essentially. And it's a forum where people could review these and review these Ponzi schemes. And essentially, to my mind, like, and to the Department of Justice, I suppose, mine too, like what had happened is they're taking advertisement money to advertise these on the forum. But they'll say, the Krasensteins will say, well, we weren't actually reviewing these, but what they were doing was taking money for some of these services. And then as soon as enough people realized it was a scam, they'd be like, oh no, hey, we have to make a scam alert about this thing. And then they just make room for the next one. So like that, the Michael Petrin guy was one of the earlier guys on there. That we talked about in the interview. So he ran, he was a guy that like, he ran an exchange for e-currencies, which were like a more centralized proto crypto kind of thing, where like if you didn't want to use USD for reasons that I'm sure are not unscrupulous at all, you could essentially, this guy would launder your money. You could send him either e-currencies and he'd send you USD or vice versa. So, and he would advertise literally in the copy of his ads would be like, hey, if you want to hide your trail financially, like this is the service to do it. And like, as Brian would mention, like, part of the reason that drew the ire of the DOJ was like a Russian cabal of like essentially the Russian mafia people were using this to like launder their money, and among other kinds of people that were doing terrible things. So by Brian's own admission, he talked to this Michael Petrin guy and his business partner for Quadriga, which was a Quadriga CX, which is like a crypto thing that would happen much later. He talked to them every day on this website. By his own admission, I don't think that he realizes that the comments that he was making about that are still public, because he kind of tries to downplay his relationship with Michael. But then you can go back and read old stuff. Well, I talk to this guy every day. And the funny thing about this is this guy that's essentially laundering money for criminals and advertising on the Krasnstein's website. His username on the Krasnstein's website was the word velour, and that's translates to the word thief in French. So it's like, he tries to like kind of like downplay like his relationship with him. And, I didn't know what he was doing. But it's like, okay, but by your own admission, you're talking to this guy that's doing financial crimes on your website every day. And then there was in the discovery for the Department of Justice, his brother Ed, he was like, he was just pretending to be a criminal when he was talking to this guy, like, because his the website was hacked and all this bullshit. So I guess it's like really convoluted because they ran, dozens of websites that were like high up reviews, high yield interest, whatever they're called, the Ponzi schemes. And it's by design that they're like that, so that it's really difficult to kind of pin them down. But I guess like at the end of the interview, I was just trying to like draw a through line between like, hey, you guys have been on the periphery of lots and lots of financial crimes, and now you're like kind of going hard in the paint for Elon, who's advertising this system where, a lot of people pay in and only a few people make money. Is that weird? Like, is that like, what do you do? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, because like most people aren't typically, like the average American citizen is typically not involved in financial crimes. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know very many Americans who've engaged in financial crimes, but they have seemed to have been parts of or directly involved with at least like two or three major multiple financial crimes.
Like financial crimes that go all the way back to like 2004. Like so that's the thing, is he tries to say, well, we didn't do this, but all that they really did was create like the architecture that other people could prey upon, kind of like in the crypto environment today, where people are trying to make money and they're trying to get out of like, working class, middle class doldrums, and you're not getting anywhere. So you turn to like these advertisements you see where like you can make money online, and well, where did all this shit happen? Where are all these people losing their shirts? Well, it happened on the Krasnstein's websites. You know what I mean? So they can say all they want that we didn't actually do any of these financial crimes, but they weren't like masterminding it. I don't think that they were, but again, when you're like when you're behind the scenes in financial crimes for like fucking 20 years, are you really that innocent? Like, even if like he says they've never been charged, which is true, do you really think that there's no blood on their hands? Do you really think that they were that just, oh shucks, golly gee, I didn't know what these people were doing on my website from 2004 to now, basically?
I'm just super impressed that they've been able to find new repeat grifts. Mm-hmm. Like it doesn't seem like they've ever had a real job, like a paid, salary job. Like the starting from selling baseball cards mm-hmm. is, that's like a fun kid entrepreneur grit.
Sure.
Like running a Ponzi scheme or a website that facilitates Ponzi schemes. That's watching them do this pattern and leading to what they're doing on Twitter right now is kind of incredible. Like the longevity and the repeat business that they're able to garner here is kind of amazing. And obviously they know exactly what they're doing. They're not like stumbling blind from one grift to another grift to another grift. Like their history of starting forums, websites. They did that they had that what is called Hill Reporter website that they also sold. It's kind of, I mean, as horrible as they are, there's a level that's kind of impressive that they're doing all this so publicly and so with such a big dumbass smile on their face that I'm impressed by the grift to an extent.
Yes. And I have to give Brian, at least I wish we'd gotten to talk to Ed as well, but I have to at least give Brian credit. It's twice he's been on our show. And we, as hard as we tried to like, we laid into him, but the guy is fucking made out of iron. I have to give him credit for that. If nothing else, the guy is made of fucking, he's Teflon, not iron. He's Teflon. He will not let anything stick to him.
I can tell how they got out of that Department of Justice interrogation.
They're strong as fuck.
Yeah, they bodied like 7 prosecutors because they just can't. They're just smiling at them and be like, "Oh, gee, golly shucks, we didn't know, sir," or whatever. Like, I don't,
Isn't it more important to have the conversation about these crimes than it is to worry about who did what when?
Yeah, like right at the end of the interview, right before he wrapped up, he said he was like getting nervous, or he said he was nervous. But I mean, throughout the interview that we talked to him, the whole hour and a half, like you couldn't really tell that he was like sweating. Like he like these people, they've been through the ringer before. Like you can tell.
Jules, how did you get interested in them in the first place?
Oh man, well that's actually a little bit embarrassing for me because I first noticed them when they were doing the Trump reply guy thing, which I was also doing, and it's listen, it's effective.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I mean, being like a Trump dude, Trump reply guy, but like from the left was really fun.
Oh, it was
right?
super fun. And I mean, that's kind of where they came on my radar first and were immediately super annoying because there were a bunch of us who were doing, reply guy shit who knew about politics, who had like been paying attention, who had like some understanding of like the economics at the very least. And so Trump would say something ridiculous. Like he would, I don't know, he'd tweet something about like the forest is on fire. I can't believe we don't have enough money in forest management. And it's like, a month earlier, he had just defunded forest management. And if you had paid any attention, you could get a lot of, you'd get a lot of views, get a lot of likes, get a lot of followers by calling that out. And the Krasensteins never did that. They would just do this shtick of, you're a horrible guy. Boom. If you if you think Trump sucks, retweet this. Boom.
Yeah, the boom was like their iconic phrase.
And you touched on it in our interview with him, June. That like,
thank you for reading those tweets,
I brought that
man.
up.
Oh.
They were the cringe lib guys. Why not just keep being the cringe lib guys? It was working so well.
Yeah,
I think it's because they're not lib guys. I think that's the heart of it. Is I've talked about this a lot, but like, well, not a lot, but like I talk about this on Twitter where people say like, oh, these guys are just motivated by money. They'll say anything. That's not quite true. These guys are like, moderate conservatives. They just found their money, or at least they found the attention that they believe would lead to money, as it did, in doing this lib shtick, because there's just a huge audience for it. But these guys are like pro cop, pro like DOJ, pro all the 3-letter agencies, landlords. Like these guys are conservative.
Yes. And I think that is kind of where they were also able to sneak under the radar, is that they clearly were just like never Trump Republicans that realized that if you just continue to be never Trump, people will confuse you for a Democrat. And
exactly.
That's how you can make the real money.
And I don't doubt that they do vote for Democrats. Like I'm sure they do. Like when he says he'll like take on right wingers, like I do believe that they're not like specifically like Trump voters or like going to be DeSantis voters. Like they're I don't think they're specifically right wing, but I think the through line in our talk with them and from what we've seen in the Elon era of Twitter is that maybe money is like the primary factor of like the primary operating factor of what most of their ideology is and what they like will espouse online. I think that's kind of what our through line in our previous talk with him just now was. And I think their ideology as a whole.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think it's worth pointing out that sort of moralless, that sort of lack of morals around making money is a really conservative type of thing.
Yes.
So I think it's still like, I totally agree. They're just in it for the money, no matter where that money takes them, because at heart, they have no real values. And from like, again, their entire history and career is no value money seeking. It feels really obvious to the point where it is really surprising when people don't see it, like in interacting with them or giving them the benefit of the doubt. Like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
I think that there's a certain context stripping that takes place on Twitter where people just don't know who these guys are. They just know that they are. I mean, I guess that it used to feel that way. Like, at least they used to parrot like a sort of like ideological talking points, but now it just seems like all they do is advertise Twitter.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, they're posting since they started getting paid. It has been so blatantly, they were doing clickbait before, but now they're like grabbing random screenshots of like memes and being like, "What do you guys think of this?" It's so diluted to the point of being like it's a fire hose of noise for money, which is honestly almost better than some of the ideological stuff they were pushing. I mean, the cops smashing that kid's head through the window.
Yeah, do we want to get into that specifically? Because I feel like that was like a really, really disgusting. We didn't talk to him about that specifically, but that was like a moment where, like, especially you, Jules, you went like really hard into the Krasenstein. Specifically, I think it was Brian about the whole. That was in New York, right? The whole influencer situation.
Can you explain that particular incident and how the Krasensteins, how do I want to say this, exploited it, I guess?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that moment was a really big like mask off. I mean, they've been teetering on the edge of like revealing the their core values here when challenged. But this was a really big moment where so essentially what happened is there's a big I'll call it a gathering in Union Square, because I already forget the name of the guy who started it. But some YouTuber was doing a giveaway, and a million like teens showed up at Union Square. It's New York. They're around. It's easy to get to. And it caused like I wouldn't even call it a riot. Like I live near Union Square, and riots have lasting impact. This did not. But in the middle of that, obviously the NYPD showed up and just started literally cracking skulls. And so there's a video of, this kid, he like, to me, and I think to everybody else, he looks like a kid. He looks under 18, who's part of the crowd, but in this video is doing nothing. There is not one moment in this video where he is doing a single thing wrong. In fact, people are running and he is standing in place. And because he's standing in place, the NYPD grabs him and smashes him up against the back of a taxi, he smashes his head against the back windshield of the taxi, breaking it. And it's just such a clear-cut example of, NYPD police brutality. We know it, we hate it, we've seen it. It's truly nothing new. And the reaction to this clip in general online was like, oh my God, they've done it again. Look at how they're brutalizing literal children, especially this one who hasn't done anything. And the clip is graphic. Like, you see this kid's head smashed through the window. He pulls back, and you see, even in this relatively low resolution clip, that his face is bloodied. It's like a pretty horrific thing to see. And so Brian Krasenstein grabs this, and by the way, quick note, grabs the video of this, strips out the watermark of the person who recorded.
He removed the watermark. That was so funny.
He removed the watermark. That's why that clip is no longer available on his page, because he stole this video, and he stole the video in order to say, you know what? We don't know the whole story. We don't know what this kid was doing. Frankly, these kids were running amok. Maybe the cop overreacted, but also, it doesn't look like this kid's head even broke the windshield. It looks like the cop's hand broke the windshield. So, we'll see what happens. The cops will investigate themselves and definitely come to a conclusion that is just and fair and real, and everybody will be fine. But let's not jump to conclusions about this. Which is just such a disgusting, I don't think it's a centrist take. It's a really disgusting take for your first reaction to a video of clear-cut police brutality, to use that as an opportunity to sort of get your more centrist, right-leaning followers on your side, because that's obviously all it is. It's not like he saw this and was sparked with a moment of, oh, I gotta get my opinion out here about this. This is calculated. This is, finding any opportunity to draw in more of the crowd that, in my opinion, the crowd that follows Elon, that is generally going to be more conservative, more like right-leaning, more pro-cop, and use that as an opportunity to grow his base, which is what every single tweet he's doing is an opportunity to grow his base. And so to me, that was disgusting. And also, again, such a mask off moment, because a couple of weeks earlier, I had called him out and discovered that he had been a landlord. And I don't know why that took so long.
I remember seeing that. Yeah. That was a really interesting. I kind of watched that one from afar. You and him kind of going back and forth about the whole landlord thing.
Yeah, I stumbled onto that completely by accident. That was just me clowning on him. Like I was joking about like, oh, you get paid to tweet, because I knew he didn't get paid to tweet at the time. This was before the this was before any kind of revenue
monetization
share.
sort of.
Yeah. But I knew that the reason he was like trying to grow this audience was to make money off of it. That's the only reason they've done, any of the things they've done. And so I was accusing him of that. I was saying like, oh, you're just doing this to make money eventually. And he's just like, oh, I don't even make money. I make money elsewhere. This is all free. And I was like, well, how do you make money? What do you do? It's not clear. And then, like, as a joke, I was like, are you a fucking landlord? And then, and then somebody DM'd me a screenshot of him talking about when he got raided by the, was it the FBI?
DOJ.
Yep. Yeah. We went into that in the interview a little bit
with
with the
DOJ
Service as well. Yeah.
No, it was the Department of Justice.
DOJ?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the DOJ.
Okay. So somebody sent me a screenshot when he wrote this like 10,000 word post about how traumatizing it was to be raided by the DOJ. And in it, he mentions that they seized one of his rental properties. And I was giddy. That was perfect. Of course he's a fucking landlord.
Yeah.
So
imagine getting evicted by a Krasenstein.
Oh.
I wish I could do the voice.
They do have a very distinctive voice.
They really do.
No, I'm not making fun of it, but I mean they just do.
It is
both of them.
It is a very silly voice to have. But anyway, so yeah, the watching the pieces come together that form this picture where, oh yeah, these guys are just like, they're not just grifting, but ideologically they are not leftists, and they have a lot of leftist followers, and that's awful to see as a leftist. So yeah, I went after them for this for doing propaganda and in the dumbest form possible. And you can tell when they get really, really defensive. They really have. I mean, they have a tell in that you can call them out all day long, but if you really get them. Get them where they live, which is in conservative Florida. If you get them where they live as conservatives, they will get really defensive, start talking in circles around it. They only respond to me, which is, I don't know why they respond to me. That's I'm never gonna. They're always like, come on alive.
That is funny that they've like that. That is funny to me that they've kind of come after you, or at least Brian. I don't know if Ed has, but Brian has 2 separate occasions, like a month apart, which I thought was pretty impressive because we felt. I mean, me and him have been mutuals, and we've talked to him before. He's never responded to me.
You got to get him riled up.
So it's astounding.
You got to call him out.
Yeah, I don't get him riled up.
Yeah, I mean that's what I said to him in the interview is that like everything he says, it's like an explanation of why one would think that this could be the case. And it's like, nah, bro, I'm asking you why you did this, not like what could have been a thing that could have existed, because that is what they do. They will talk you in circles endlessly. They will just be like, they will have analogies. They will have counterfactuals that have no bearing on the conversation. It's a very familiar pattern, like if you hear them do it more than once.
I think my experience with them has been that you can catch them in ideology. You can catch them in places where, because they're not leftists, because they're not really, because they only have this surface level understanding of like politics, social politics, economics. you like the landlord thing was amazing because he goes, oh, so you're going to tell me that everybody who's a landlord is a terrible person? He doesn't get it. He has no idea. He'll walk himself into the trap. I mean, that's where you get them. It's surprisingly easy given the opportunity.
That's a great way to put it too, is talk them into an ideology, like get them to admit what they believe in order to expose what rotten little cretins they are.
I think they're a symptom of really like liberal, like heavy liberal centrist ideology, especially in the era of Elon Musk's social media, which kind of incentivizes being very, and I'm not to say that Elon Musk is like a centrist, because he's not. I mean, Elon Musk is very clearly far right, but it incentivizes platforming right wingers and being very like, you know, like very kind to right wingers. You know, it's a very right wing time on social media.
I think part of this that makes a lot of sense is that part of what they're doing is extending an olive branch to these conservative communities that have been abandoned and have been like ridiculed and mocked.
Yes.
Rightly so.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you see them do this kind of stuff, when they're playing this centrist shtick, it's not really centrism. It's them saying, you know what? You can be a literal Nazi. You can be an actual full-fledged Nazi, but you know what? We're here to talk. We're here to listen.
Yeah, that's entire. That's like most of what we talked to him about. We like said that to his face. We fucking got him on that so fucking hard. Like, what's the value? What's the value in talking to Nazis? I keep forgetting the QAnon shaman guy's name.
Chansley.
Exactly. But we confronted him. Yeah, Chansley. We confronted him on that and
I actually used your tweet, Jules, where
for
you like, or it was like a screenshot of him replying to someone else like, oh, I would talk to Nick Fuentes if I could. And I'm like, how do you expect any of us to fucking take you seriously when you're saying this stuff, you know?
He just had Bill Mitchell on. It's he's not like
That's so nasty.
I did not know.
crazy. I didn't even know you could get Bill Mitchell on.
No, because that's the thing. Like, I'm sure we could get Bill Mitchell. Bill Mitchell talks like these people, these like never Trump centrist types, but like they're still right wingers. That's their whole shtick, you know. Like they want to.
Yeah, we could get Bill Mitchell. We could get Jacob Wool. We could get James O'Keefe. These guys would do the show. We're not like trying to figure out how to get big names on here. So we're reaching out to known liars. Like that's what the Krasensteins are very obviously doing.
Yeah.
But they're good, like, in my opinion, they're good proxies to kind of like observe this kind of very centrist legitimization ideology of not only like Elon, but like the right wing, where they'll be like, oh, we're just having conversations. Like this is like a topic I feel like a lot of people on the left have had since like 2016, you know, and like 2020, where it's just like, oh, is there value in talking to like right wing personalities or like even more centrist personalities? But I feel like the Krasensteins in particular are just like such a good proxy for that conversation, because that's we've seen the shift in them where they would in the past be like those Trump reply guys, where they're like, oh, Trump is going to be indicted, boom, on this thing, boom, you know, and then like now they'll talk to the QAnon shaman or like, you know, like they're a good like proxy for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, as long as it's not literally Donald J. Trump, they are cool with them. Like anyone else.
No. But in our interview, he even said, breaking news. Brian said he would talk to Trump.
The author of the Ronald Plump book has fallen.
And I asked him, what value do you think you can get? Like, what value can anyone get from a conversation between the Krasenstein brothers and Trump? What could we learn about Trump or the Krasenstein brothers that we don't already know from a conversation? What are you facilitating? What are you making happen? And they just don't have a good answer to that.
Well, because the answer is just more attention on themselves from the audiences that they want, which are right-wing audiences. I feel like I'm interested if there is a way to talk them into admitting that, because it is so obvious. But I imagine that all they do is just lean on, well, conversation is good. That's how we bridge gaps. That's how we fix this country.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's definitely what he leaned into. So I think we have a PowerPoint or some information prepared.
All right.
Is that both of them,
yeah.
or is that just
That's
one of
both
them? I've seen pictures of both of them, but I've never realized just how identical
they look exactly
they
the
look.
same.
I mean, like identical. They like look so similar that they almost. I don't know how to explain it.
They look like
It's
clones.
uncanny.
It's interesting because Brian is hands down he's the ringleader. I mean, if you can be a
He's
ringleader,
the alpha.
he's the alpha.
He's the alpha.
I don't interact with Ed. Ed has nothing. Ed is not fun to talk to. Ed is like a Chat GPT version of what Brian is putting out. Like, he's just like, listen, if there weren't video proof, I would fully just assume that it's one guy doing that. It's just a guy named Krasenstein Brothers. Like, Brothers is his last name. Like, it's the same as like when sorry, I do want to dive into this, but it's the same as when when they got kicked off, and I think it was Brian's wife Heidi started tweeting. That's
Yes.
Brian. There's no.
Yeah, he admitted that.
He admitted to that.
Yeah.
He admitted to it. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's pretty early in the interview.
Pretty early
it should
on,
be in the
he's just
premium.
like, yep,
That's a scoop. That has not been admitted yet.
It should be in the free, because we're going to do about, I think, like 15 minutes of the interview free. I think that should be within the first 15 minutes. He admits that he did go on his wife's Twitter profile.
People will care more about that than him like it. Hey, people are giving you money to do crimes, like these criminals are giving you untraceable money. Yeah. Oh, so you're just going to say that? Yeah. But actually, my wife was me on Twitter, so that's the scoop.
He's like, my wife had an account, and I did post from it.
Yeah.
So they sold baseball cards. Now, we talked about this in the interview, and I genuinely, and Caleb's already described it, I still don't really understand what those centralized e-currencies are. Because
Literally
they really only
just a
seem
way
like
to do crime. That's
to buy drugs on the internet. It's like what it...
Yeah, because I don't really know, because it was kind of described as like proto crypto. So like, what is it? Like
it's crypto
not
without the
but
blockchain.
It is? Like, what is it?
It just didn't have
But
the
that-
blockchain.
Yeah.
But isn't that like what a Chuck E. Cheese token is as well?
Yeah,
as
literally,
crypto?
yeah.
Literally, yes.
It's money laundering.
It is literally just money laundering, and that's why I'm trying.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hammer this home. Like when he's talking to that Michael Petrin guy, he's advertising in the ad copy of on this website. He's saying like, "Oh, you can erase your financial trails by using me as your e-currency." What are they called? Exchange. It's the same as a crypto exchange, except for again,
You know what they remind me of? Did you guys ever see this movie? It's not a very good movie called Middlemen with Luke Wilson.
No.
Mm-mm.
You guys don't know this movie?
Guess I missed that one.
It is about the early payments processors in the early days of the internet in like the mid 90s. And they basically became the way to buy pornography. And because they facilitated so many transactions to buy porn, they were like investigated by like the SEC to see if they were violating any laws in like human trafficking, and they ran into all these issues and were ultimately exonerated. And it's very similar to what I understand the Krasensteins to be doing pretty much for the past 20 years.
There is a link in, so all the early stuff. I don't know what the rest of the slide is going to look like, but in the early stuff that we're talking about, the financial crimes part of this slideshow, there's a link in one of them that goes to amycastor.com, and she's like an independent journalist that has written very extensively about, not just the Krasensteins, but like the people that they worked with, and Shadow Crew and Petrin and Gerald Cotton, and like why Michael Petrin was formerly named like Omar Dahani or whatever his last name was. I don't have it in front of me. He changed his name like 3 times, and it goes in like, if you really want the details of like what these guys were doing and why it matters, it's amycastor.com. And one of the posts is linked in that.
So Omar Dahani, he is one of their clients and their preferred exchanger. So he was one of these guys that worked on this site, or is this a different operation?
So he advertised. Well, see, the thing is, if you listen to the interview, Brian will not. He knows the answer is yes. Listen carefully when I ask him this, because I asked him like 4 fucking times. Did this guy advertise on your fight?
He's rehearsed this.
Well, he's had to answer this to a fucking prosecutor. You know what I mean? Like, so the answer is yes. This guy did advertise on at least one of the Krasenstein's many websites.
He did kind of admit to that in our talk with him.
Yeah, listen to it. It's interesting how he chose to answer some of these, because again, my follow-up question was, are you worried that any other branch of the federal government is going to pop you for some of this stuff? And he didn't seem to like that question for reasons, but this guy and then his partner Gerald Cotton started later. This is irrelevant to the Krasensteins, but it's just funny. This guy, they would start their own crypto exchange that would go a Ponzi scheme thing that would end up defrauding people of hundreds of millions of dollars. And this Gerald Cotton guy, who again, Bride admits to talking to online almost every day, he was like, I think 30 at the time. And he has, because of the dumb way that crypto works, he has passwords that have access to $250 million of his client's money that only he has access to. This guy checks into a hotel room in India with his wife and says he's not feeling good, has his hotel drive him to the hospital where he's somehow pronounced dead, and the hotel requests to have the body embalmed, and they can't access $250 million of money mysteriously right as these indictments start flying. So like, draw your own conclusions, but basically a lot of people are thinking that, you know, this guy faked his own death or whatever the case may be. Or at least they were when I first heard about this. This is a Netflix documentary about the whole thing, Quadra CX. It's fucking crazy. But again, it doesn't directly tie back to Ed and Brian. But when you look at, these are the guys that were paying the money to advertise on their multiple websites and who they were hanging out with online, you start to see some patterns. And that's kind of where I was trying to like get him to talk about those things a little bit. And he was very clearly uncomfortable with that.
So Michael Patron, the other gentleman here, Omar Danani, aka Sifu, is another one of his
velour, the French word for
alias,
thief,
or velour as well. I linked several financial crimes he was implicated in here, including.
So like high yield investment programs are essentially just financial Ponzi schemes.
That was the crypto Ponzi scheme. This one is a identity theft Ponzi scheme where they were selling users' identities.
Love that.
Scams on scams on scams. Never stop scamming. Co-founder
They're on the
Michael
grind
Patron
set for
is actually-
scams.
he was convicted in Egypt for some other scams as well. So,
this dude knows all about being convicted for scams, and this is someone who, Brian has admitted to talking to every day,
every
at
single
one
day.
point. Every single.
I think
day.
he said almost every day. Let's get the facts
Almost
straight.
every
Facts
day.
matter.
yes.
And this one, which Caleb linked, which is which is the one that we've been talking about. Quadriga, which was the scam that advertised on Brian's scam. And this is like the whole story. Is this the original story? Oh yeah, from 2005.
Yeah.
that
These
we'll
articles
have
go
linked there as
all
well.
the way back to the very beginning of what these guys are up to.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if the Google searches are to be believed, Michael Patron, aka Omar Danani, is also a big cat guy. I think he owns a tiger. So important addition there.
You got to know that these are the kinds of criminals that will buy tigers. That's a very important context to all of this.
Yeah. And I feel like most people, most typical people don't have like a tiger in their backyard that they just kind of hang with.
I didn't get a chance to read much about Omar or Michael, I know at one point the Canadian, because he got deported to Canada because this is where he's originally from, and the Canadian government was seeking him for questioning, and he was like at large for many years. So it's like one of these guys is hiding from the Canadian government, the other guy faked his own death. Like these are the guys at the Krasnodars are just fucking yucking it up with
Some of my best friends in the world.
Yeah, who amongst us doesn't have a couple of friends that are hiding from the Canadian government or faking their own deaths?
But everyone's got that one homie that's faked their own death. Everyone has that homie.
They're so good though. They're so good in the conversation because he does basically make you feel like, yeah, I mean, he faked his own death, but that doesn't mean.
Yeah, well, that's just the funny thing about Brian. He's just like, I know I didn't do anything wrong. And it's like, you're hanging out with a man who owns a tiger and is on the run from the Canadian government. Like, stop. Just like, we know what you are. It just, the whole thing just makes it funny. Like the guy's screen name was the word thief in a different language. Like it doesn't get any more on the nose than that.
He didn't seem too fazed by you bringing that up, that it was thief, literally
the word
thief.
thief.
Yeah.
He just rolled right off him. He's Teflon, man.
I just can't believe
the modern.
No, sorry. I was gonna say, I can't believe how deep the lore is on these guys. They're not like, they're what, in their, are they 40?
Like 41, I think.
They have to be at least 40 at this point.
Yeah.
Because they've been operating since the early 2000s. Yeah.
This is just an incredible amount of, maybe 40 just doesn't feel old because I'm in my 30s, but like, I wouldn't have enough time to do all this shit. This is
this is crazy. These guys are just online doing stuff at all times, man.
They're grinding. They're really
so hard. I think
you nailed it early, Jules, when you said that like they've never had any other job. They've never done anything else.
They literally haven't, by the way.
They wake up every day and live for this shit.
And obviously they're rich as hell.
Yeah. Because they got into Bitcoin. So Michael Petrin on his exchange, by Brian's own admission that he told me just an hour ago, he's the guy who got this Michael Petrin into crypto. He has a whole article about how he got that guy into crypto. He
bragged about it on our show an hour ago. He's bragged about it.
There's like email screenshots of him like, hey, you should start taking Bitcoin. And the guy at Michael was like, I don't know what this is. What is this crypto thing? Then 4 years later, he's on the run from the Canadian government and his business partner fucking faked his own death. Like, come on.
And Brian's like, honestly, yeah, that was me.
I do have to say, the Krasensteins are a little bit of an aspirational case because like all of us want to just be able to make a living from posting, right? Like they're a little aspirational in a really dark way. Like they're doing what most of us wish we could be doing.
I've been reading about these guys for nonstop. I wish I'd started earlier, but I've been reading about them for like nonstop for the last like 3 days because it's just so fucking crazy when you read these stories. And I got to watching that Netflix documentary, and again, that's like on the tertiary. Like it doesn't really have anything to do with them, but it's like the people they're like they came up with. I didn't even get into like the Hill Reporter. Apparently, the guy that they sold it to is this big weirdo. Like, there's just unending lore.
You're talking about the thing that they sold their website to? Is what you're talking
they sold the Hill Reporter to it's like some Romanian millionaire or something. I'm probably wrong about that. Don't hold me to that. But I remember reading like some comments like, this guy's a fucking freak, and I meant to get to it, but I just didn't have the chance. It's like all these people that they're interacting with in whether it's the Ronald Plump book, the hillreporter.com, their various financial crimes. It's just like, or did you know that they started their own NFT line and they bought one of Ivana Trump's
Tiffany Trump,
excuse me, her NFT.
Oh my God. Tiffany Trump being the like liberal, like the anti-Trump,
the resistance
Trump, right? Yeah, the resistance Trump. She did an NFT. Yeah. I didn't even know that shit.
They bought each other's NFTs. It's just so fucking funny. Like they're just you have to give them credit for like how hard they are in the paint on just any conceivable like grift or scheme or the flim flam. Like there's probably a Wikipedia page that links to theirs about them. Like
I think it would be really beautiful content, Caleb, if for one of your upcoming live streams you just did research on the Krasensteins live for an audience.
Drink every time a Wikipedia page links to theirs. Yeah. They're literally like the Forrest Gump of like online scams. They've been in it since the beginning.
I mean, it goes back to 2004. How many people do you know, like online, like in our sort of circles that go back to 2004. Like not many people. What were we going to say, Jules?
This just feels like, listen, this is just a gut feeling. I don't want to get sued, but this feels like one of those cases where it's, there's these people, they're in the public eye, they're super loud, they've got all these like weird kind of connections, but nothing really. They're Teflon until perp walked by the FBI out the front door, like laundry list of charges, all these weird connections. They're like everybody knows about
everyone.
them.
Yeah, everyone knows about it. Everyone kind of knows what's going on, but no one wants to say it, sort of deal.
No, but it's just a very like public persona that seems bulletproof, but obviously the pattern is it's obvious. The pattern is like low key criminal, or at the very least, like low key fraud without directly.
Well, the
dipping
reason
into
that their
crime.
house was seized, the rental house was seized because of wire fraud. Let's just call it what it is. That's what happened.
Mhm.
That's why the other people went under. And it just makes you kind of wonder, like, okay, so they had to give up our rental house, but how much money did they make off this? And how did they get away with no further punishment? They didn't, in the letter that the DOJ wrote, it does speak to like, if any other, I'm paraphrasing poorly here. I wish I had it in front of me, but the DOJ letter, when they talked about this, was like, yes, we seized their house. They're not being charged. However, we can't speak to whether any other branch of the federal government is going to charge them. However, if they did, this could be considered, like a note of good behavior for any other future investigations. Like it's in the letter. So I just don't know, like to what level they cooperated, or I don't know. There's just so many questions, so much smoke. I mean, again, I don't want to like come out and straight up accuse them of any further or ongoing crimes, but like, holy shit, like how much smoke does there need to be before?
Well,
like,
he also said something very weird in the interview to me, which was when you said, "Are you worried about any other federal agencies?" He said, "I know for a fact that no other federal agency is coming after us."
Like, really, you do? Because
I mean,
your
I think
buddies
that's
were
just
getting
a thing to
popped.
say.
Yeah.
The way
Yeah.
he said it with such conviction, I get what you're saying. And the reason that it was weird to me is like, well, like the statute of limitations, this and that. Like, well, no, because like people that were like advertising on your site, I tried to list some off, but he wasn't really, we had to move the conversation and it was dragging, to be frank. But a couple of companies that were like advertising, doing the same things, like just got popped about 7 months. It was December of 2022. So not that long ago. What is that? That was like almost like nine months ago. So
Yeah, just about 9 months.
like,
Yeah.
that's not actually the case. If they're building a case against you, I don't think the statute of limitations is going to apply in the way that you think it does. So the only way that you might know that there's not a case against you is if you're cooperating. So I don't know. That was just what I thought. Obviously,
Yeah,
I'm not
that's what
making
it
any
sounds like.
Yeah, I'm not making any accusations.
I'll make the accusation. I think they gave up a bunch of money, snitched on like whatever Russian mob people or whoever they could, get got instead of them, and like walked away from it. All of this points to that. Like they settled, quote unquote. I don't even know what that means in the context of a DOJ investigation. But like, yeah, they gave up a ton of money and walked out scot-free as like, oh, we barely had any involvement. Like, yeah, that's what happens when you like turn other people in to the like higher up people. Again, they're not. Yeah, I don't think they're masterminding this. Again, they're just they're picking up the scraps from other people who are like this is the
They're
Elon
forum
thing.
mods, dude. They're not masterminding anything. They're just like,
well, that is the thing, is like they just feel like guys that kind of have been really online for a long time that have, I mean, and of course they've gotten involved with like a lot of crazy people, but like they're not like an Elon type, but they get along with Elon because that's the kind of circles they run in.
that's the next. Like,
I mean, at
tier
this
up
point,
from
I
them.
assume they're fully legitimate because they are able to make money, but through the attention they've gotten rather than through like posting Ponzi schemes.
I also just don't think that they really need to worry about money too much. Excuse me. Is if you think about like, this is for Whack and June and Alex. If you think about the last time we interviewed him, he was like, well, I don't make money on this. I don't make money on that. I don't make money on any of this. It's cool. What are you making your money on? And it's like, okay, well, shit. Back in 2011, you were getting exchanges to start accepting Bitcoin. So I would imagine they have a lot of money from that they just don't need to worry about.
Yeah.
Definitely. And of course, I mean, we already brought up, and like, they are landlords. They have been landlords. Like, they have done a lot of these different types of financial situations that I mean, not that being a landlord is going to get you got, but in that one case where that one property was seized, like, they have been involved with so many different types of schemes.
That's why I don't think it's a big deal, the amount of money they got paid, because I don't think $25,000 is a lot of money to them.
Probably
no, it's not.
No.
It's not. I think it's confirmed. I just can't remember where I've seen this, but like, I almost think that they've admitted that, yeah, they're Bitcoin millionaires. Like, that's just, they've got the money in the bank. And it's kind of obvious looking at sort of the bigger picture of how they're living and who they are. Like, yeah, these guys don't have to worry about, again, never having had a job. They just have to keep grinding to like grow their empire. There's no, I think we can clearly tell that they are just, rich and ambitious and kind of bored.
Yeah, so I have here on this last slide that I have designed, I have some of the extra information. So Talk Gold and Moneymaker Group, those were the two websites that they owned. That was run.
Those just sound like scam
They are.
websites.
Yeah.
And they own like
all
30
sound
websites
like
like
scams.
this.
Every single one of these things have sounded like scams.
Well, the Russian mafia one was called Perfect Money. Like
Perfect money.
Yeah. Yeah, when he said that in the interview, and he was like, yeah, there was a site called Perfect Money, I was like, you believed anything perfectmoney.com had to say to you? Yeah. And he Patrin was going by the French word for thief. He offered Shadow Crew members, which was his site, right?
Well,
Shadowcrew.com, rated by the Secret Service for currency fraud, right?
yes.
Yeah. And he was advertising on Talk Gold and Moneymaker Group. And Brian claimed in our interview that was because Google AdSense was the one serving those ads.
Yeah, no, bro. Well, that was just so funny too, because like I'd ask him like specifically, do any of these companies advertise with you? Well, I can't remember. It was so long ago. Like, no, did they? Like, come on, you know.
Do not recall, Your Honor.
It really felt like, and I'm sure it's probably the case where, like, yeah, I mean, he brought up his lawyer at one point, like he's probably well rehearsed in how to handle these kind of questions. I don't think I don't think he was ready for it to come from us, especially because of our last conversation, where like our last conversation when he got unbanned about, like, what was that? Like we talked to him about 6 months ago or so. Like, it was a lot kinder than this current one.
Well,
I just don't think he was ready.
It was like right before I think the Bud Light stuff popped off, and they started being really a lot more transphobic.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the Bud Light stuff, and like you said, Jules, they're ideological conservatives. I think the Bud Light stuff triggered them just in the same way it did a lot of other psychos.
I mean, 12 minutes after he got off, I looked at the timestamps. 12 minutes after he got off the call with us, he was both sidesing Carlos Santana doing transphobia at a live concert. I mean, like 12 minutes is all it took for him to get right back to it.
Awesome. I don't know if we're ever going to talk to them again, but I think that...
No, I'll be honest. I felt like after that, I feel like I'll be honest. He's the type of guy, and they're both
back.
the kind
he
of
would
guys.
Come back every time.
But I feel like where we left off was a lot less gracious. Like, I feel like we could. But I don't know if we will. I don't know
that we have anything left to say.
That's
to
the
them.
thing.
You're right.
But I do think
right.
there is more research that we want to do and more information out there about them.
I do want to say,
Caleb,
there's the confidential informant on that shadowcrew.com case is about to get out of jail in a few weeks. And I just found out about this like within the last 48 hours, a lot of this stuff. So I am going to reach out. I want to know what he has to say about Ed and Brian specifically. I would be very curious. I don't know if he'd be willing to talk to me at all because, so many reasons. But I would be very curious to see what that guy has to say about how they got to cooperate and walk or whatever. A lot of interesting stuff.
It's the third Krasenstein brother.
Well, that's Ken Klippenstein.
Yeah,
so this guy's the fourth Krasenstein.
I feel so bad for Ken. That joke is just like
I
at
love that
this
he gets
point-
confused for a Krasenstein so often.
It's funny
Yeah.
as hell to me, but yeah, probably not if you can. But I don't know. I don't think we're gonna really spend too much time on this show talking about that much going in the future. Maybe some like when we start doing more of our, because we just did our first stream last night, which was fun. Thank you for showing up, those of you who did. That kind of stuff, like follow-ups on old episodes that we don't want to keep talking about, and just things we couldn't really fit into the main show would be fun to do. I will keep you guys updated on that specifically.
And if you yourself have any information about the Krasensteins, we would love to share that.
You can
information
stay
with you.
anonymous. We should set up like a Telegram or something.
We should absolutely.
Yeah.
Jules, I think we're about ready to wrap up this then.
Yeah,
Jules,
that was really
thank
fun.
you for coming on and expanding a little bit on like the kind of modern state of the Krasensteins.
I'm so glad I got to do it. I love this topic. This is
I mean, it sounds like you're a little bit like me. You're like me, where like I've known about the Krasensteins for like 6 or 7 years, like in their like boom, like the Trump reply guy era, and like seeing them now is just kind of like a far cry from where they used to be, you know?
Yeah, it's the lore. It's understanding that it's so much deeper than this this like vapid nonsense that they're dropping on Trump. It's so much better now.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This is fantastic.
Yeah. Where can people find you?
Just on Twitter at Jules_SU. That's where you'll always see me yelling at the Krasensteins.
Thanks for coming on.
Boris, thank you.
It's the Twitter file.
Hey, that's it for the main feed episode. If you want to listen to the Patreon episode where we have a conversation with Brian Krasenstein that made him angry enough to tweet about it and for Elon Musk to respond, you can hear that at patreon.com/westernkabuki. We are also going to be putting up a pretty sizable preview of it that you can hear on the main feed. But yeah, hope you subscribe, and either way, we'll talk at you next week.
To silence right-wing voices, and they denied having done so.